Welcome to Mantis, where we dive deep into Bitcoin cycles, market structure, and long-term accumulation strategies. Today, we're going to talk about the debt nobody ever defaults on. Quick note before we start, nothing on this channel is financial advice. I'm an analyst and a builder, not a financial advisor. What you do with any of this is entirely your own decision. The national debt is unpayable. You've heard it 1,000 times. It's on every chart, in every thread, behind every buy Bitcoin post, and it's half true. But almost nobody asks the question that actually matters. Not how big is it, not when does it blow up. A simpler one, who do we actually owe it to? Because once you answer that honestly, the whole story changes. The debt doesn't get paid the way you think. It doesn't get defaulted on the way you fear. It gets handled in a much quieter, much more personal way. And you are very likely one of the people quietly paying it. Let's pull it apart. Tens of trillions of dollars, a number so large it stops meaning anything, which is exactly why it works as a scare headline and a terrible explanation. So picture the other side of it. Every debt has a creditor, someone who is owed. So picture them. Who is it? A foreign superpower holding the country hostage, a shadowy cartel of banks. That's the cartoon. The real answer is stranger and a lot more uncomfortable, because when you actually open up who holds all that debt, the answer is mostly us. The government owes itself. A huge chunk is held by its own trust funds, Social Security, Medicare, public pensions. In other words, money the government has promised to its own future retirees. That's not a foreign creditor. That's a promise to you. Later, too. The central bank. It bought trillions in government bonds with money it created out of nothing, and then hands most of the interest back to the Treasury. Owing money to an institution you created, that gives the payment back to you. Sit with how strange that is. 3. Domestic savers. Banks, pension funds, insurers, ordinary people. This is the biggest slice. It's other citizens' savings and retirements parked in government bonds because they're treated as the safest asset there is. 4. Foreign holders. The bogeyman, and it's real. Other countries do hold a chunk, but it's smaller than almost everyone assumes. Less than a quarter of the whole. So the dramatic question, who do we owe it to, has a deflating answer. We mostly owe it to ourselves, to our own central bank, to our own retirees, to our own savers, to future us and saving us. And that is exactly what makes it dangerous, because you don't default on yourself. Here's the mechanism that ties it together. When the borrower also owns the printing press, the debt is never truly unpayable. It is always payable, in name, by printing the difference. You will always get your dollars back, every single one. The catch is what they're worth when you get them, because the cost doesn't vanish. It moves not onto the government. The government just prints. It moves onto the creditor, the saver, the pensioner, the bondholder, the person who did the responsible thing and held the safe asset and watches it quietly buy less year after year. The default never gets announced. It gets disguised. An honest default says, we can't pay, you lose. Debasement says, we paid you back every penny, while the penny buys half as much, same loss, quieter paperwork. So the debt isn't unpayable. It's unpayable in honest money. In a currency you can print, it always gets paid by the saver, not the state. A default announces itself. Debasement doesn't. You don't default on yourself. You debase yourself. Now, here's where I want to be fair, because this is the point where most people turn this into a rant, and the honest version is more interesting than the rant. This machine worked for a long time for a specific group of people. If you owned the assets early, a house in the 80s, equities through the 90s and 2000s, you didn't just survive the debasement, you rode it. The very same force eroding the currency was inflating your assets. You were on the right side of the trade without having to do anything clever. You just had to already be standing there when the tide came in. A whole generation, broadly the boomers, did extraordinarily well out of exactly this. And I want to be clear, not because they cheated, they didn't. They were standing in the right place at the right time, and the system rewarded asset holders for 40 years. So this isn't a story about villains, it's a story about a mechanism and what happens when the music slows, because the bill doesn't disappear. It moves to the generation that came next, who now face the same debased currency and the inflated assets, priced out of the very houses and markets that made their parents wealthy, holding a currency engineered to lose value and told to be patient. You don't default on yourself. You debase yourself and you hand the bill to your kids. So, if you've worked out you're on the wrong side of that handoff, what do you actually do about it? Let's rule things out. You can't print. That's the government's lever, not yours. You can't vote it away. We mostly owe it to ourselves. There's no villain to throw out. And you can't out-save a currency that is designed to lose value. Saving harder in the thing that's being debased is running up a down escalator. There's really only one move that escapes the mechanism entirely. Own something that cannot be debased to pay someone else's debt. A money with a fixed supply. No printer, no hidden bill, no button. A committee can press to dilute your share, to bail out a balance sheet you never signed. That's the entire case for a scarce asset, not number go up. It is the one form of money whose claim can't be quietly diluted underneath you. And here's the part that ties it back to everything else on this channel. The boomers had cheap assets and a rising tide. This generation has something they didn't, a fixed supply asset, available early, before most of the planet even understands what it is. That is the modern version of the oldest move in the book. Own the scarce thing before everyone else figures out it's scarce. That's what Mantis and this channel are ultimately for, not trading, using the cycle to secure a slice of the one asset the debt machine can't reach, and accumulating it systematically at the cycle low instead of chasing it at the top. But I don't want to leave you on the bleak half of the picture, because it is only half, and the people who do well from here are the ones who can hold both halves in their head at the same time. Yes? The system is stacked, the debt, the inflation, the housing costs, the broken incentives, all real. None of it was your imagination. And also, there has never, in human history, been a moment with this much raw opportunity in front of an individual. Information that used to cost a fortune is effectively free. Tools that used to need a whole corporation, the software, AI, no code, open source, are now cheap and absurdly powerful. Global markets are a tap away. Ideas spread faster than at any point ever. And for the first time, there's a genuine asymmetric bet against the old system. A fixed supply asset you can own a slice of early. So yes, the game is harder in one specific way, asset prices, but for someone with skill, discipline, and clear thinking, the upside has arguably never been higher. The deck is stacked, and the tools have never been better. Both at once. The people who get crushed by this decade are the ones who only see the first half, who marinate in the grievance and stop there. And grievance is seductive. It asks nothing of you, and it always hands you someone else to blame. The people who do well see the broken incentives clearly, get angry enough to pay attention, and then turn around and use the unprecedented tools to build their way out. Bitcoin is one of those tools. Clear thinking is the other. You need both. So, let's land it. The debt will not be repaid, not really. It will be debased, slowly, quietly, in the value of your money for years, by an institution that owes most of the money to itself and pays it back to itself in dollars worth a little less each time. Here's the good news in that you don't have to understand the whole machine to step out of its path. You don't need to win the argument. You just have to own something it can't touch and give yourself the patience to accumulate it through the part of the cycle when everyone else has lost theirs. That's the modest, useful thing Mantis does. It doesn't fix the debt. Nothing does. It tells you where you are in the cycle so you can secure that scarce asset methodically into weakness instead of emotionally into strength. A default announces itself. Debasement doesn't. Own the thing it can't touch. If you want to track the cycle yourself, Mantis is available with a free trial. Link in the description. Step back, tune out the noise, and let the cycle do the work.